And then Joe, you'll do the Facebook Live as well. Yeah, great. Good morning. I see Steve Mullinax empty room. Hi, Kathy.
Welcome as my new rep.
Oh, nice to see you. Thanks for being here this morning on this pretty day. Or it's hard to, what's going to end up happening today? I can't tell if it's the clouds are going to take over. It's the battle between the blue sky and the clouds right now.
I'll go check Weather Underground.
Let me know. Let me know. We have a small group today. Maybe the weather is.
Basically, the guideline is go out early.
Okay.
It's going to get cloudier, and it's going to turn into basically total cloudy by about 3 p.m.
Okay, good to know. Thanks for the weather report. Okay, so we are now on Facebook, and it is 10 a.m. Hi, Steve. Steve just had a birthday. Was it yesterday, Steve? Was your birthday? You have to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. It was yesterday. I'm amazed. You're right on top of that.
Well, it's, that's one of the beauties of Facebook. Speaking of which, we are now on Facebook Live. Good morning. It's Saturday, March 6th, and this is Rep. Lisa Reynolds' second constituent coffee of the 2021 session. I'm going to turn it over to Joe Erickson, who's part of Team Reynolds, to get us started.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Reynolds. Before we begin, I just wanted to start with a land acknowledgement and just saying that we are currently seated on the traditional land of the Yali Tualatin, the Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, and the Kalapuya. Indigenous people have played a large role in shaping the world we live in today, so we want to make sure we acknowledge that before getting started. And just a quick note about just kind of, how we like these things to go and all of that. We, of course, really love impassioned critique and encourage, differences in policy discussions and all the other discussions that we'll have in this space. But we just ask that everyone remain respectful of each other and the representative and the senator. And if someone's behavior crosses the line from frustrated to disrespectful, we may ask that individual to leave this call. But thank you again, and I would love to pass it back over to Rep. Reynolds to get us started.
Great, good morning, and thank you all for being here. It's a real treat this morning to be figuratively sitting with our senator, Senator Ginny Burdick, who's been serving our district. I know that the lines have changed a little bit, but since 1996. Senator Burdick grew up in the district, attending both Chapman and Bridal Mile Elementary School, as well as, and listen for this, Ida B. Wells High School. So really, really exciting to have that new acknowledgement of Ms. Wells' contribution to our community. I've gotten to know Senator Burdick over the past 5 years as a constituent and as an activist with Moms Demand Action. And I think most people here, seeing how I know a lot of the people here, certainly know that Senator Burdick has been a champion on gun violence prevention work before it was cool, before it was the huge grassroots movement it is, before it was even politically safe to do so. And I'm really grateful for that. So I've gotten to know her through my work with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense, who had their kind of lobby week this week in the legislature. So it was really fun seeing moms on our screen this week, working on many gun bills, which we can certainly get into. And Senator Burdick has certainly been a generous mentor to me, and I'm very grateful for that. Just to go through Senator Burdick's, just a few words on her A few brief words on her long Senate career. She's a former Speaker Pro Tem of the Oregon Senate. She's a former majority leader. She stepped down from being majority leader because she wanted to kind of, as you told me, get her hands back, really in the nuts and bolts of policy, which she certainly has been doing. I want to make sure I get the title here, Chair of the Senate Committee on Finance and Revenue. This means in English, this means she helps craft and modify Oregon's tax code, which is how we collect the money we need to run the state and to help all Oregonians. So we're gonna start this morning by turning the mic over to Senator Burdick so she can share a little bit about her legislative priorities. And then I'll talk a little bit about mine, but mostly as you know, I'd like to keep this pretty informal. We are here to answer questions, to have a discussion. And so without further ado, our Senator Ginny Burdick.
Thank you so much, Representative. I see Dave and Pat there. I usually see Dave and Pat walking along Terwilliger with our masks on. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you at your constituent coffee. You are my rep, and I'm so proud that you are my rep. I want everyone here to know how impressive Lisa has been, how quickly she's come up to speed, and how focused she is, and how her experience in the medical field and in her advocacy with Moms Demand Action has really made her a very focused and effective legislator. I don't often see new legislators get up to speed as fast as Lisa has, and I just couldn't be prouder to consider her my representative. I feel represented very well. As Lisa said, I'm chair of the Senate Finance and Revenue Committee. I'm back in Nerdville, which is where I'm happiest. And we're working on tax issues. One of the priorities that I have is going back to the pass-through tax break that we passed in 2013 and narrowing that down. It's been used in ways we did not intend for it to be used. And so I want to make sure that we narrow that down, because we can't afford to be subsidizing the richest Oregonians when we have people living out on the streets. So that'll be my top priority. You've all heard about the issues around the disconnect, and I see John Calhoun here, so I know we'll get a question on that. But that issue is a little more complicated than it seems, and I can get into that more later. I especially, there are so many things about Lisa I appreciate, but one of the things I appreciate most is her advocacy, her strong and focused advocacy on gun safety. My bill, Senate Bill 554, which will allow local governments and schools to keep people with concealed handgun licenses out of public buildings. And it will also ban, across the board, ban people from bringing guns into state buildings. We've seen a lot after January 6th, that if we haven't had a wake-up call before, we certainly had it then. There is no screen on people getting concealed handgun licenses. There's no screen for members of the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers, or people who have very serious, sometimes violent personality traits. There's no screen for that. It's a very rough screen. And so there are people who have these permits who shouldn't have them. And there are a lot of people who work in these buildings who simply do not want to be surrounded by people packing heat. And those are the people who should make the decision. And Lisa testified very eloquently at the hearing that we had on the bill. And the bill is now out of committee. There's a possibility of a minority report, so it got a little bit delayed, but we expect to have a vote. I have the votes on that bill, and we need to get her done and get her over to the House where Lisa can take the lead on getting it through the House. So I won't go on and on anymore because I just want to say how happy I am here, see so many familiar faces. Judith, you come to every single one of these. I don't think we've ever had one that you didn't come to. And I really appreciate seeing all of you here.
Well, I feel blessed to have both of you.
I know. And we are blessed to have you, that's for sure. So thanks for being here, Judy. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's always, this is like great. It's like being back with friends, I know, I've known Pat and Dave through Mons, but I met Cheryl and Dave through the campaign. I know Steve through choir. I mean, it's just, and Indivisible. And then John Calhoun, I got to know during the campaign as well. And then and Kat, I've gotten to know just being constituent, which is really awesome. And then Kevin and I have shared many a room within the Behavioral Health Committee. So grateful for all of you for being here and who's ever watching on Facebook Live. Oh, and my sister's here. She covered her camera, but my sister is here. Sarah, who's just has been such a great support for me personally and on the campaign trail. She's combing her hair. Sarah's in Seattle. Okay, I'm just going to talk a little bit about, kind of an update from my point of view. Certainly, especially in light of this being Moms Demand Action Week, saw some of you all there for on, I guess it was Tuesday, was my turn at Moms Demand Action Advocacy Day. I know it turned into a whole week, which is really cool. But in the Oregon House, we've just finished 2 sets of public hearings on closing the Charleston loophole, which would allow law enforcement to really, complete their work of making sure that someone truly passes a background check before that gun is released to a prospective buyer. Senator Burdick is a chief co-sponsor on that with me, and also we'll just keep scratching each other's back. No, I'm kidding. But also testified eloquently on that bill with us. This coming week is a huge week because safe gun storage legislation is being heard in the House Health Committee, and there is a public hearing on Thursday, March 11th. And if any of you all want to testify on that, I'll be sending out information to everyone on this call and easy ways to either provide written testimony or oral testimony. And that's a bill that it's such a simple, smart bill. It requires that guns are locked when they're not in use. Something I personally have been working on. I think this will be my 3rd or 4th year working on this. We've tried some ballot measure stuff that didn't quite work out, and it's been held up in the legislature for a variety of reasons over the past few years. So this is also the year to get that done, and is one of 4 priorities for Moms Demand Action. So it's the Charleston loophole. It's Senator Burdick's kind of public buildings safe storage, and then a bill that would outlaw ghost guns, which are guns that can be, the really short version of that, guns that can be printed or manufactured and elude the whole background check process. Other things I'm working on, I would say right now, the House Behavioral Health Committee is taking up a lot of my time and bandwidth, and Kevin certainly knows a lot about that, of like so many things, our behavioral health, our mental health system has been chronically underfunded, and we're seeing it in Oregon continuing to have among the worst mental health kind of numbers in the country, and extremely poor access to mental health services. So there's some really exciting, bold bills to really update and revolutionize how we're providing mental health care for people, including true payment parity on par with how we treat physical health. And then we'll just have to make sure Senator Burdick raises the money we need to get that done. Or, it's really, we talk about budgets being moral documents, but this is really long overdue. I think on that note, I would say let's just open things up for discussions or updates people have. You guys know I'm always here to talk COVID. But I know I've also been pushing a lot of emails out about that, but I am happy to address that if people are interested. I will say Oregon continues to come down in our rates of cases and deaths from COVID. I think you all have heard me say that Oregon continues to be among have the lowest death rates from COVID in the country. We're in the like the top 3 to 4% in terms of the best we're doing on keeping the death rate down. I've calculated that if Oregon had the death rate from COVID that matched what the national average is, we would have lost about 6,600 lives to COVID in Oregon. Instead, we've lost a totally tragic and heartbreaking 2,200 lives, but because of the hard work that we've done, the sacrifices we've made, all of us Oregonians, we've been able to keep that death rate way, way lower than what people in other states are seeing. And I'm really grateful to everyone who continues to make those sacrifices. And we're not out of the woods, but there is starting to be a little light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccines coming through. But you guys know, I'm happy to take any questions on COVID or vaccine information. So any questions? You guys are a little quiet today. Feel free to unmute yourself, or Joe can unmute you. I don't know what the protocol is. Oh.
Lisa, I would like, thank you, by the way, for these wonderful fireplace chats.
Yes, this is my fireplace.
As you know, I mean, I mind map the sessions because I appreciate so much the information you're putting out, and I really want to be aware. I've probably been more aware of government things because of the last 4 years. It really taught us to wake up and pay attention. So I want you to know I really appreciate you for more reasons than just we're both people who came from Illinois and we came to Oregon, and it's fantastic. I just love it here. So I just have a request. And one of the things that I know is I know our House representatives have got a lot of tabs open on their computer, and I know you have like over 3,000 bills to go through. I did send an email just, bringing up a topic that we've talked about bringing the safe harbor law, to something in Oregon. 11 other states already have it. And I know it's not something that a lot of people here, I don't know, maybe they're connected to it, but there is now an LC. And when you have an opportunity, if you could look at it, this is something, as you know, which is really important to myself and all of my students and graduates, things like that, as well as to my business being able to really reopen fully. And I know that Monday is a deadline for reading an LC and giving it an opportunity to be heard. So I just want to ask if you can maybe take an opportunity to look at it, and I would be very happy to have a conversation with you about other things, but it's just a safe harbor bill appreciating consumers for their choices in alternative choices for healthcare, and as well as choosing practitioners to work with.
Great. Kat, you have my word. I will look at that before the end of the weekend.
Thank you very much.
I
I
will get
really
back.
appreciate it. And feel
Yes.
free to just send me a text or send me an email, and I'm 100% to help you in any way I can and to let you know what's going on in that piece.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all you're doing. And thanks for the putting the bug in my ear, whatever that sounds like a negative thing. You know what I mean? Thanks for reminding me.
I know. It's funny how words can do different things.
I didn't mean it that way.
That's okay. No bugs. I did
Yes,
not.
no bugs. Thank you.
Butterfly. If you're going to do anything, make it a butterfly.
a happy bug. Judy had a question about, will there be testing of kids in school when in-person learning resumes? I have not seen that as part of the plan. I think it would be awesome, especially since we have some rapid testing, but I have not seen that as part of the plan. I poured over some of it this morning. I know that the OHA and the Oregon Department of Education will be, is supposed to come up with updated guidelines on March 19th in anticipation of elementary schools opening on March 29th and high school and middle schools opening on April 19th is the latest. So great. We'll let John, I'll go to John Calhoun. We'll get to everyone, I'm sure. And I suspect I may be punting this question to Senator Burdick, but let's see what John has to say.
Okay, well, this is actually first one for you. All the friends I know who have gotten vaccinated have either been in an institution that took care of them, or they're A personalities who have worked the system, if you will. And, you know, I have friends who work constantly, can't spend 4 hours, you know, every morning trying to get an appointment. And I just think of the people who don't have the computer skills, don't have children who can do it for them, don't understand how the system works, goes to the state site, signs up, and this stupid process of random generating could mean an 80-year-old doesn't get vaccinated till June. I think the state has really fumbled how to take care of the people who can't take care of themselves. And I don't know if there's any time left to try to address that. I mean, vaccinations are accelerating and so on. After this, I have a question for Ginny, but.
Yeah, okay, great. Yes, I 100% agree. I do think, you know, this movement toward what is, I mean, like someone said, it's a lottery system, like bingo, like, I don't know why I didn't come up that word before. It's essentially a lottery system now, where those who are eligible can sign up on getvaccinated.org, I believe it is. And then they wait to receive a phone call. And hopefully you're by your phone when the phone rings. And I think that was an attempt to, you know, kind of circumvent this, you know, Hunger Games, survival of the fittest kind of way of getting vaccines. But I agree that's problematic. And I think your feedback on maybe within that lottery system, we should still be prioritizing those in the older age groups. That's certainly feedback I will give to OHA.
Well, you could do it by, you know, group. So the lottery could be within the 80-year-olds, and then another
Right.
lottery for 70-year-olds, another lottery for 60-year-olds.
Yeah.
So you could keep it, you know, open in some way, but you know, you can just know statistically, yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And then I also think the rollout, my biggest concern earlier this week, well, Monday, was that the rollout of the new system was not really announced. I mean, there was a really good Oregonian piece over the weekend, last weekend, but it was, you know, it was like, it kind of went live at 9 a.m. on Monday without a whole lot of warning. And that kind of bothers me too. I have said to, and I said it to them, so I'll say it to you, like, do you guys not have user experience people who kind of vet how this works for folks? And I mean, I hear a lot that OHA, who, you know, I mean, I really applaud what they've, you know, they really have really upped their game in terms of how quickly we're getting shots into arms. But I do think that, yeah, they're not a communication shop. They're not a front-facing agency. They're really a policy shop. And I think it's made it very difficult for people. And I've also said that we can't, you know, I'm not OHA. I know you can't make more vaccines. I know we can't make even more appointment slots, although maybe we could by just upping the game per day. But we need to communicate better with people. I think that is almost as much as the frustration is not getting an appointment is the process. So I'm and they've heard what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to change it. They've asked me to reach out to the hospitals who are running the All for Oregon site at the convention center, and I have. So I am really trying to advocate for these exact same issues behind the scene. Although you did bring up a new thing, John, which I'll share, is like within the lottery, we can have a tiered system. Now I'll let you ask Senator Burdick a question.
Yeah, by the way, one more comment.
Yeah.
The people who are aggressive are going through the pharmacies.
Right.
And the state
yeah.
site is just a piece of available vaccines. So if you get on the phone and you call every pharmacy every morning, you'll find a slot.
Yeah, you're right. I think the pharmacies are going to continue to be an easier slot for people. Bi-Mart and Walmart were just added to the mix along with Safeway, Albertsons, Walgreens.
Costco.
Thank you. I think that's it. Yeah.
So, Ginny, on the COVID tax issues, I agree with you that given where we are with a kicker, trying to fix that becomes, do you give money to the wealthy by not doing anything, or do you give it to them through the kicker? But those are your two choices. So one of the questions is, what can we do to shape things if the kicker is close to try to avoid kicking? And then the second thing is, I'm going to be sending you a paper on the pass-through. We really support what you want to do there. But I've done some more research that I think you'll find useful, and I hope you'll read it, and it can help shape the eventual legislation. So.
Yeah, that will be very timely, John, because we're working seriously on this. I have a good partner in my vice chair. He's been receptive to making some of these changes to, because we were both on the original work group. I'm ashamed to admit that we tried our hardest. Believe me, we tried our hardest to keep this from happening. And it's just, you know, whenever you're talking about money, it's just like people find the weak spot, they find the loophole. And so it's just time to fix it. I'm glad you recognize the, which I'm not surprised, but I'm glad you recognize the interaction between the disconnect issues and the kicker. Basically, the easy way to say this is, if we disconnect from some of these CARES, you know, tax breaks, a lot of that money will just go out in the kicker. And the tax breaks themselves, you should understand, it's pay me now or pay me later. So what the tax breaks do is they let businesses, and in some cases individuals, take money that they would have to deduct in future biennia and let them deduct it right away. Now, for some of the small businesses, that'll really help some of the small businesses. But of course, it doesn't apply just to small businesses. But if they get the money now, if they get the tax break now, then they don't get it in the future. So if we allow them to take the tax break now, then they will pay more in future biennia. And if you look at our forecast is looking much better than we expected for this biennium, which is why we're facing a kicker, but it's looking very flat in future biennia. So from a global standpoint, you can argue that it makes more sense to put off those tax breaks, to take the tax breaks now and then collect them in the future biennia when you can see the need is
right. On the PPP double dip, you haven't gotten a proper hearing on that yet because LRO hasn't come up with an estimate. That's a one-time gift. It doesn't go away.
That's correct. And for reasons that are just way too wonky to go into, we're waiting till after the May forecast to take up that issue, John, and you can probably figure out why why it's wonky.
Yeah.
And but it's definitely on our radar screen.
Great. I was going to actually turn, I think I was counting on Steve being next in line. He put a couple of things in the chat. I mean, one of which, and just going back to the vaccine thing real quick, you're right. Oregon's administered 78% of our available vaccines, which is pretty good. I think we are getting vaccines into arms fairly quickly, especially when we compare ourselves to other states. And then Judy brought up a great point, which I first learned about from the famous Senator Dembro, who's now being touted for his daily, he has these daily COVID updates, which has received recognition from Willamette Week and Portland Monthly. And it's where I still get a lot of my information. But Senator Dembro, and now amplified by Judy, mentioned something called vaccinefinder.org. And that it tells you where the pharmacy doses are, and it helps you find pharmacy doses in the area. So, but Steve, go ahead and ask. You put a question in the chat. I wanted you to have a chance to ask.
All right, there's a couple of bills I just wanted to sort of test the waters on. Okay, and these are both supported by a coalition of indivisible groups around the state. So they're have some level of importance to us. One is House Bill 2495, which is the expansion of the Toxic-Free Kids Bill of 2015. The other is the It's called House Bill 2842, called Healthy Homes. Supports home upgrades to help improve the health of families across the state. It's just sort of testing what's your take on the prospects for either of those bills in this session.
So one thing I'll say, and Senator Burdick can jump in, I'm as a new legislator, I'm having a little bit of a hard time kind of wrapping my arms around, you know, how to tell what's going to be the priority bills that are going to pass. And I think part of it is we're not in the building that much. We're there we're going to be there now 2 days a week, and kind of hallway conversations. So as someone mentioned, we have 3,000 bills. Obviously only a small subset of that are going to pass. And I will just say, Steve, I mean, these are things that both, you know, I am supportive of, and I think it has a lot of support. I'm just not sure where it all fits in the hierarchy of what's going to move forward. And I don't know if Senator Burdick has any insight into that as well, because obviously it has to pass both houses, both the House and the Senate.
Yeah, no, we have a pretty strong committee system in the legislature in both the House and Senate. And so it's really hard to tell, you know, which of the bills will get traction. The way to check it out is if it's scheduled for a hearing, that means it's at least being considered. And then of course, there are some, like I'm going to be having hearings on some bills that I would never vote for. And those are called courtesy hearings. If a member of my committee wants to have a hearing, for example, next week I'll be having a hearing on the estate tax. And so,
You mean probably on removing the estate tax, however.
well, or revising it. And I don't have a completely closed mind on it, but I've told the advocates, you know, I'm giving you a hearing, but don't have any expectations. Those are courtesy hearings. If you have a bill introduced by, you know, frankly, by a Democrat in a Democratic controlled House or Senate, sometimes that's a courtesy hearing, but oftentimes that means that the bill is getting some traction. And then if it's scheduled for a work session, that's where they actually consider whether they have the votes to get it out of committee. Then you know it's really on its way, and you got to watch it really closely. And that's the stage at which you'll have amendments and a serious vote on whether to advance it.
Okay, I appreciate that advice on how to keep my finger on the pulse of the legislature. But I would also encourage both of you to have a look at both of those bills, and you know, hopefully you could get on board.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm actually going to grab a pen.
I feel really strongly about this issue. I've had a chemical-free house, especially when I was raising my daughter, and you know, the amount of toxics that are going into our kids is very alarming. There was a thing on the news last night about some baby foods that have been seen to be contaminated with lead, and it's just it's a very serious problem. And so I can't, all I'm saying is I can't imagine a bill that would strengthen those provisions that I wouldn't support.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I'll look into those too and let you know if I find anything.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to flag Tatiana's question in the chat about COVID disinformation and specifically misinformation happening at the Multnomah County Library.
So, and then Kathy, you'll be next. So Tatiana, thanks for being here. Hi. Of course, I'm super concerned about COVID misinformation and, you know, incredibly disturbed by the governor of Texas, you know, reversing the mask mandate, which to me is like the worst misinformation you could ever ask for it. So at a government level. But I don't know the issue around misinformation at Multnomah County Library. Is there something in particular you can share with us briefly?
Yeah, so I'm Ukrainian American, and I speak English, Ukrainian, and Russian. So one of the things I was looking into is having Ukrainian language books in the library. And so far, the library only allows Russian books. So I looked into the Russian language section, and I can tell you it's very disturbing, partly because it looks like the library just takes Russian newspapers and just makes them available here without understanding what information they give. So there is a lot of racism there. There are articles saying that women should be proud of their bruises because domestic violence is fine. But it's also right now, there are things that talk about, COVID can be cured with mushrooms. So this is what I picked up at the library, Holgate branch. They just give out right now reference materials because the library is closed. So this is a newspaper that the Holgate Library branch just gives out. And the newspaper is called The Truth of the Young Communist League. It's still a Soviet time newspaper. And the biggest article here talks about COVID can be cured by Russian mushroom. So this is just one example. There is another newspaper that talks about the fake elections in the US, again, and also why COVID vaccine was only allowed after the election. And again, this is library. It has even the address of the library. The library subscribes to this. So I know this is not, legislators, you are not the county government, but I think you should be aware what information is just given by the library. And since it's a government institution, many immigrant communities thinks of this as the library putting their stamp of approval on this information.
Yeah. Wow, that is shocking. And I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I mean, I think, I would certainly, I bet Dr. Sharon Myron, who's your Multnomah County Commissioner, would be interested in hearing that. And if you want my help with that, let's connect by email. But I agree. To me, it's like a stamp of approval. Just like in my clinic, sometimes our staff will put out like those free WebMD magazines, and they're not bad, but it's like, no, I do not want to be promoting WebMD. I mean, I don't want to be promoting any business entity. So in any case, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'm happy to help with that. I'm making a note. But I agree. I think as we have a responsibility as public entities to think about what we're disseminating. So thank you. Any thoughts on that, Ginny, in terms of other things to do?
Well, that's pretty shocking. I'm very disappointed to hear that. And I don't have an answer right now, but I really want to thank Tatiana for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah. Kathy Moyd, you've been patient.
Hi, I'm Kathy Moyd. I'm getting my vaccination tomorrow at the convention center. I'm 76, so I'm right up there. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters Climate Emergency Portfolio. So I've been spending a lot of time at both the Senate and the House and Energy and Environment committees, providing written testimony as well as verbal. Right now I'm talking for myself, not for the League. There's one bill I would like you to be aware of. In addition to being active with the League, I've also been active with the Citizens Climate Lobby for another number of years, and they've been supporting the federal carbon fee and dividend, which I consider is probably the best option at the federal level. There is Senate Joint Memorial 5-1-1, which is important, that is actually having the Oregon legislature support carbon fee and dividend bill, represented by the one that was in the last legislature, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. So I would like to encourage you to be aware of that. It's coming up for its work session on Thursday, I believe. But what I would really like, and I have a feeling Ginny is probably the one most able to answer this, is will we be able to get 100% clean electricity through the legislature this year?
Does hope count? I'm hoping.
Well, how many fingers? I only have 2 fingers.
I was so disappointed when we were stopped by the walkout from doing the climate bill in the last session. It's just, it was such a reasonable bill. It would have been so effective in putting us on the board as really helping with the climate issue. So I hope very strongly that we can do this. The governor, you should all know, has taken pretty aggressive steps to use her executive authority to the maximum extent possible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we need to provide the legislative support.
Yeah, I have been following the cap and reduce part of the executive order since last summer.
Yeah, I actually remember when she signed that executive order. I think it was like it was as COVID was, it was like March, whatever, 9th or 10th or something last year. And yeah, but thank you. Yeah, and then Steve wrote that there are bills trying to plug some of the gaps in that executive order. It can only go so far. You know, and I'll put you on the spot for a minute, Senator Burdick, about how you're thinking or feeling about the prospects of another walkout. Obviously, it already happened once on, I think it was February 25th, a one-day protest against the governor, apparently, although it was interesting timing because of what happened in the Senate Judiciary that very morning. But just how you're thinking or feeling about that right now, if you feel, however comfortable you feel talking about it.
Yeah, and I don't have a definitive answer. As you know, the problem that we have in Oregon is we're one of 4 states that has a quorum requirement of 2/3 of the Senate. And so that means you have to have 20 senators on the floor to even open a session, to even do any business. And so we are struggling as a caucus. Hold on. We're struggling as a caucus on how to, at what point and how to make sure that a walkout doesn't occur. We've got bills in the Rules Committee on which I serve to, to basically make it illegal to use campaign funds for walkouts, to have fines and penalties. There are things we can do by rule, things we can do legislatively, and there are things that would require a constitutional amendment, including changing the quorum requirement. So we are struggling with that now. We are in a different, we were caught by surprise. It was such a nuclear attack when they did this. And my tummy tells me they're not going to do it again. It was very interesting to me because Lisa made the observation that just in committee that very day of the walkout, they passed out my gun bill. And of course, the gun bill had been traded away for a previous walkout in 2019. And so, and they feel very strongly they've threatened to walk out over the gun bill. But it was very interesting to me that when they came out and explained why they walked out, it was as a protest. They did not mention the gun bill. And that is, I still think that's why they did it. But the fact that they understand how much the public supports gun safety, that they did not use it as in any kind of public way, which I found kind of encouraging. So I'm hoping it's just a one-time deal, and we won't have to take extraordinary action, but we might have to. And I know that our district will support us when we do that, because people are appalled at this political malpractice.
Thank you. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point that they didn't publicly say it was because of the gun bill, because I think you're right. They understand that doesn't, it may resonate with their particular voters, but they're going to lose the discussion on a statewide level, which is where this is kind of heading, whether it's thinking about how to change the rules through statute, through passing laws through the legislature, or if we go the route of trying to change the Constitution, that requires a ballot measure that every single Oregonian has the opportunity to vote on. So if it comes to that, and I know that's being discussed and it's obviously expensive and there's pros and cons, it's going to require some really important messaging and education of the public of what that means. Thank you. And then Kevin, hey, do you, first of all, did anyone else have the, oh, Cheryl, I will get to you, Kevin. You're still here, right? Yeah. Cheryl and David, or just Cheryl. I don't mean to, you're not a, she speaks for you. Smart man, smart man.
Sometimes he speaks for me.
I'm sure that's true.
I would like an update on the police accountability bills and the other BIPOC committee or caucus sponsored bills. I hope we're making progress there.
Yeah, I'll speak with what I'm seeing on the House side and then ask Senator Burdick to comment on what she knows on her side. I recently had kind of a session where Representative Bynum kind of went through each bill that are mostly being heard in the committee that she chairs, which is a subcommittee. I can't remember the exact name, but like on community policing or police reform. And I think there's certainly a very, very, very strong enthusiasm, not only among the Democrats, but I think Republicans as well. So I don't, like so many things, I don't have a great feel for how they're all being prioritized. I think she mentioned there are kind of 12 to 13 bills that she feels pretty strongly will move forward, meaning will move out of committee, will be voted in the House and then sent over to the Senate. I think most of them are in the House right now. So I think there's just a lot of optimism right now that we will make some significant changes on that.
Good, thank you.
And do you have any insight on that, Senator Burdick, on your side? I think most of them are starting on our side.
Yeah, I think most of those are starting on the House side. However, I am the chief sponsor of a bill that would ban the use of a noose as a demonstration on public or private property. And it's really been inspiring to see people coming forward. There was a hearing on it last week. And especially as a graduate of Ida B. Wells High School, now formerly Woodrow Wilson High School, Ida B. Wells was a crusader, a journalist crusader against lynching, and so I feel especially honored to be the chief sponsor of this bill. I have co-chief sponsors who are all the people of color in my caucus. And I do expect that bill to go through. It's, displaying a noose is a hate crime and it's meant to intimidate. It's not that much different from people bringing guns into the Capitol. It's a hate crime. It's meant to intimidate and it needs to be punished accordingly.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Chelsea had something.
I just wanted to give a quick update that bill is scheduled for a work session on Tuesday morning on the 9th. So,
Great.
so everyone.
That's always, as Senator Burdick said, once, that's a great, when, getting to a work session is like another part of, I think, of that funnel. So that's great news. Norman.
Thank you, Representative and Senator, for doing this coffee this morning. I always enjoy listening to all the issues that come up. I wanted to observe that part of the reason for the logjam in the legislature and the walkouts that they can get away with is because the legislators can get primaried because of the way we do our elections in Oregon, particularly the closed primary, where the radicals kind of dominate the election system at the primary level. And there are half a dozen bills in the legislature that are promoting ranked choice voting and other alternate voting methods. And I'm convinced that one of these alternative methods would actually moderate the kind of people that we get elected to the legislature and eliminate the extremists to at least some degree. And I wanted to know what you thought of these bills or what the prospect might be for them getting passed in the legislature.
Yeah, I think I'll defer to Senator Burdick on that. I think it's a really great observation. I don't have a great feel for what the political appetite is for sitting legislators.
Yeah, well, I am on the Rules Committee. We will be considering those bills in my committee. We had extensive hearings during the last session. Senator Hass was a big advocate of the ranked choice voting. I believe it's in Maine, isn't it, Norman? In Maine that they have the ranked choice voting.
Yes.
And Judith confirms that. I'll want to study how it's worked there. I know that we had a race this cycle where our very, very highly qualified Democratic candidate was defeated by the same margin of votes that a third party person got, on the left end of the spectrum. And so it really is important to get people in office who are workers rather than ideologues. And so anything that's going to help that happen, I want to look at seriously.
So I'll observe that Trump wouldn't have been our president last time if the Republicans had used ranked choice voting kinds of method in selecting their nominee. He only had like 10% of the vote in the early primaries and caucuses, but he was able to outmaneuver the others who combined, had 80 or 90% that would have easily defeated him at that level.
Yeah, very, very, very scary.
Kevin, did you want to talk about your bill? I think it's a great bill. I signed on to it. Did you want to talk about that for a minute? This is, as I mentioned earlier, I'm on the House Behavioral Health Committee, and just some really innovative, important bills for changing or improving access for mental health services coming through that committee.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much, Representative Reynolds and Senator Burdick. Thanks for the opportunity. Though I'm not a constituent of Representative Reynolds or Senator Burdick, I used to be a constituent of Senator Burdick when I lived on the west side. My name is Kevin Fitz. I work for the Oregon Mental Health Consumer Association, and I'm very active in the state, in my state political party's healthcare caucus. And to that end, do an awful lot of intersection with the state and the county. You mentioned Commissioner Myron. I'm on one of her mental health reform task force, and I sit currently on the governor's 988 task force to look at consolidating the helplines, so people who are in mental health distress will have a sort of centralized approach to that. The bill is House Bill 2980. I want to also give a shout out to my Representative Rob Nose and Representative Cedric Hayden, a Republican from Falls Creek. This bill is a redo of a bill that came out in session 2019. Some of you may or may not know we didn't have a behavioral health standing committee at that time. So it played in Representative Salinas's committee, passed that, and was on its way to Ways and Means, and just didn't get enough support to keep it in the discussion. However, I should say what the bill is basically peer respite. And what that means is every day in the metro area, in the 3 counties, there are somewhere between 100 or 200 people who go to the door of the psychiatric emergency room, which we call Unity, or the Providence ER, or the Legacy ER, or Cedar Hills Psych Hospital. So every day, approximately 100 to 200 people are going in to attempt to get either taken there by the police or EMTs, or by a family member, or by themselves, to get inpatient psychiatric hospitalization. So, and that's a good thing that people are reaching out for that. But the significant amount of those people who get in those doors are only there because they can be held. They meet criteria: danger to self, danger to others, or they cannot meet their basic needs, like they can't feed themselves and they're going to starve to death. That's the criteria to hold them in the hospital. Theoretically, all the hospitals have the philosophy of, we take voluntaries. Unfortunately, the involuntaries are taking up all the beds, so there's no space at the inn. So what we are proposing, and Governor Kitzhaber sent me out 20 years ago to New Hampshire to look at a pilot project called Peer Respite. And what it is, it's an intermediate voluntary supports. Think of about a bed and breakfast or around a community home with 6 to 7 beds in it. And it's intermediate and it's voluntary, but it connects you with emotional and psychological support with people who are certified by the state as peer support workers who understand the integrity and the channels of the psychiatric crisis system. So, and in essence, do psychiatric episodes happen to go from 0 to 60? No, they don't. They're episodes that the more that you live with such, you can sort of see them coming on. And so it's an opportunity for people in psychiatric crisis and upcoming distress can check in before they get to, if we use it as a 1 through 10 and psychiatric distress, before that are at 11 and they need to be hospitalized and contained, can they find some support in a short stay facility? And we are proposing, my little tiny volunteer nonprofit have been working on this for 6.5 years, propose out, I don't know how many in the state of Oregon, but roughly 200 or 300 people a day will seek inpatient psychiatric services put on an involuntary hold. We are asking the state to make 18 beds available across the state, 6 rural, 6 frontier, and 6 in the metro area, to make it available for people who are in psychiatric distress to be able to have an earlier intervention with emotional and psychological support. And if it need be, do a referral to higher up psychiatric care. This was endorsed significantly by Governor Brown's Behavioral Health Council, which was a 1-year process. Also this summer, Governor Brown's Racial Justice Council endorsed this. The legislature created under Steve Allen and Pat Allen at the Health Authority, a consumer council that I'm the vice chair of, that endorsed this and said, we think this is very important. Just in terms of cost, it's $342 a day to stay in the peer respite in my model that I'm proposing. And it's $1,500 to $2,000 a day to keep you in Providence or Unity or any other psychiatric hospital bed around the state. So maybe that was a long version. I didn't mean to use up so much time, but it's very important to me. And I'm not just an advocate and a lobbyist. I live in public housing. I've dealt with schizophrenia since I was 20 years old. This bill, if it went through, would have saved my dear partner 3 or 4 evictions or possible evictions, because I had no place to go. The emergency room wouldn't take me because I was not demonstrably out of control, but I needed, excuse the language, but I needed to be babysat, or I needed to have ongoing psychological and emotional support until the storm cleared. So anyway, we are very grateful for Representative Lisa Reynolds. And I want to say, just watching all the freshman legislators, she punches above her weight, and her social media, her accessibility. I used to tell Kenny Geyer and Rob Nose, there's an awful lot of representatives that don't have very many constituents' coffees and don't put a whole lot of time into educating their constituents. And Representative Reynolds is a gem, and it's great to see this burgeoning political star on her ascent. And Senator Burdick, I appreciate your work. I was sorry to see you step down from that position, but I've appreciated your conscience and your work for years. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you for sharing your story. You guys know I've shared my story of my brother who has severe schizophrenia, who's currently in the hospital, and a peer support center wouldn't have prevented this particular hospital stay. But this work is so important and long overdue. So thank you. And I'm
one added point out regarding BIPOC and Representative Bynum's bills. The Racial Justice Council, we powwowed with them, or we came together with them. We are putting in a language in an amendment that specifies one of these peer respite centers will either be staffed and run by a BIPOC peer run organization or an Oregon Tribal Association peer run organization. Particularly, we already having interest in Southern Oregon and a tribal nation down there who says, we would love to put in a bid for such a thing because we think that would really help us. So anyway, thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin. And Kevin put in the comments there was an OPB piece, I believe, yesterday on bringing light to this bill. We're getting near the end of our hour together. I will remind you that I do these constituent coffees the first Saturday of the month. And then I do town halls the third Sunday of the month at 5:30. But you guys can always reach out to me, through social media, through my email. I think you guys know I often will answer my own email late at night because I really enjoy doing that. But any other, we have time for one or two more questions. And thanks again to my, I get to call her my colleague, Senator Ginny Burdick, for being here, and her staff, Chelsea, and of course my staff, Joe, who kicked things off today.
Thank you for having me. This has been a really good meeting, and I love seeing the familiar faces.
Yes, great. So we can, thank you, Kat, everyone. We can go out and enjoy the day. Kathy gave us a weather update early on that the sky should stay bluish till about 3:30 when the clouds went over. Although we are not daunted by clouds in Oregon. I may head up to the mountain this afternoon and get a little cross-country skiing, and as you guys know, I like to do. But so great to see you all. Thank you for joining me this morning, and thanks again to Senator Burdick and our very capable and cheerful staff, Chelsea and Joe. And we'll see you all next time.
Thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.